I once held the position of a department manager in the frozen foods section at Walmart. During my time there, a rather distressing incident unfolded, and though I wasn't present when it occurred, its repercussions left a lasting impression on me. It all began on one of my days off, which meant I didn't witness the events firsthand. One of my fellow employees arrived at work that day, exhibiting signs of severe confusion and disorientation. She couldn't recall the date or even the day of the week. When asked to state her name, she drew a blank. It was evident that she was grappling with what some might term as a minor case of substantial brain damage. Here's where things took a concerning turn. Instead of promptly dialing 911, the store opted to contact her mother, urging her to pick up the distressed employee and take her to the hospital. What might not be widely known is that when you inquire, "What is your name?" and the response is a bewildered, "I don't know," it should be an immediate cue to summon an ambulance. As it turned out, this woman had experienced a ruptured blood vessel in her brain, an alarming medical emergency. Her ordeal could have been fatal. However, due to the reluctance of Walmart to make the necessary call, her life hung in the balance. But that's not the only unsettling incident I encountered during my tenure at Walmart. There was another unfortunate episode involving a colleague in the produce department who suffered a heart attack. Shockingly, the store's response was once again devoid of immediate action. Instead of swiftly contacting 911, it fell upon one of the fellow produce associates to step forward and volunteer to transport their stricken coworker to the hospital. Reflecting on my time at Walmart, it becomes apparent that it was an environment where my life, or that of my coworkers, seemed to hold minimal value. It's a disheartening realization, one that underscores the importance of prioritizing the well-being and safety of all employees, regardless of the corporate backdrop. I assumed the role of managing the toy department, a role I inherited roughly a decade ago. It had been left without a manager for about 6 months, and the previous manager, quite frankly, had been nothing short of inept and indolent. The department was in shambles, and it was evident that a massive overhaul was desperately needed. But I took on this challenge with the unwavering confidence of a seasoned toy department aficionado. I knew I had the knack for transforming any toy department into an inviting shopping haven. My approach was simple: a meticulous cleanup, restocking with precision, and relentless hard work to make the department shine. I was ready to tackle this task solo, knowing that Walmart's commitment to toys was rather lackluster, to say the least. Here's where the story unfolds. My initial step was to give the place a thorough physical cleansing. Overstock items were strewn haphazardly around, and the bike and Power Wheels racks had devolved into dumping grounds for all manner of random items. Power Wheels, for the uninitiated, are those large electric ride-on toys. It took me several days of grueling work, but I finally managed to restore order to the Power Wheels rack. I could finally begin relocating the Power Wheels boxes to their designated spots. However, as I reached for one of the boxes, it emitted an unsettling rattling sound. I thought perhaps some other toy had found its way into the box, or maybe a bag of screws inside had torn open. But as I shifted the box, I noticed a damp streak where it had rested, along with a suspicious hole in the corner. Alarmed, I suspected the worst: mice. No sooner had this thought crossed my mind than 2 mice darted out of the hole and scurried across the tile floor. I let out an involuntary scream. Leaping backward, my composure momentarily shattered. Still, I pressed on, convinced that I needed to remove the contaminated box from the sales floor. It was entirely unsellable in its current condition, and I couldn't risk the embarrassment of customers discovering its contents. I fetched a cart and gingerly attempted to load the box. To my horror, the box's bottom gave way, and mouse excrement cascaded out, mingled with bits of paper and some unidentifiable liquid. It was a truly nauseating sight. Every time I shifted the box, it seemed to unleash a fresh torrent of filth. Summoning every ounce of resolve, I eventually managed to place the box on my cart. I then donned my personal protective equipment, PPE, prepped for a task I usually regard with a sense of humor. However, this was no laughing matter, and I yearned for a full-fledged biohazard suit. Returning to the back of the store, I approached the section designated for damaged goods and apprised the employee there of the situation. I explained that I intended to discard the item and elaborated on its disturbing condition, emphasizing the necessity of marking it down appropriately and ensuring no one had to handle it further. To my surprise, the response was far from cooperative. She vehemently objected, asserting that we couldn't mark down the item and were forbidden from disposing of it. Instead, her suggestion was to try and sell it in its current state. I recoiled at the notion, appalled that she couldn't grasp the inherent safety risks posed by a toy saturated in rodent feces. Our disagreement escalated into a full-blown shouting match. I found myself grappling with a mix of fury and incredulity, unable to comprehend how my colleague failed to recognize the egregious nature of the situation. Tears welled in her eyes as I seethed with anger. It was a confrontational moment that left us both emotionally drained. Soon enough, the store manager arrived, seemingly appalled by our altercation. He conveyed his decision that the item be cleaned and sold as a display. My protests fell on deaf ears, and I begrudgingly accepted the fate of the wretched toy. I sliced open the box's end, revealing a grotesque sight. It wasn't just a case of mouse excrement. It was an extensive nest filled with lifeless rodent bodies strewn across the toy. It was a revolting tableau, one that will forever be etched in my memory. With grim determination, I hoisted the wretched thing out of the box, almost losing my footing from the overwhelming stench. I knew it needed to be banished immediately. I trudged to the compactor, dragging the putrid cargo along, and engaged in an unrelenting 40-minute battle with the compactor's stubborn maw. I removed the battery, taking it to the automotive department for recycling. If it meant my job, so be it. I couldn't endure the thought of allowing such a hazardous item to remain in my department. Though everyone in the store had witnessed my impassioned stand over the past few days, nobody spoke of it again. The store manager, however, inquired about the display's whereabouts. I didn't mince words, explaining that I had discarded it in the garbage. His reaction was one of simmering frustration before he turned and walked away. Despite the tumultuous episode, I ultimately succeeded in rejuvenating the toy department. Pest control specialists were summoned, improvements were made, and my department thrived for several years. I garnered awards for sales and overall improvements, earning a newfound level of respect among my colleagues. Never again did I encounter a problem remotely comparable to that sordid ordeal, and the store manager, the source of much of my exasperation, was soon demoted and relocated to another store. It was a defining moment in my retail career, one that underscored the importance of advocating for safety and standards, even in the most challenging of circumstances. I was employed at Walmart, a retail giant, about 11 years ago, and my journey with the company was relatively brief, spanning just 8 months. During that time, I held the position of an overnight stocker for Department 8, which happened to be the pet section. Now, the store I worked at was going through some changes. They had just installed brand new high-rise shelves, boasting the impressive ability to hold over a ton of merchandise. One fateful night, after diligently stocking all the regular freight and neatly storing the overstock in the bins, my managers presented me with a daunting task. They instructed me to move not 1, not 2, but 8 pallets of arm and hammer cat litter onto those very same high-rise shelves. Each of these boxes was loaded with a bonus 10 pounds of product, making them weigh nearly 35 pounds each. I hesitated, and rightfully so, questioned whether those shelves could handle such an enormous weight. I was genuinely concerned about the structural integrity of the shelves, so I voiced my worries, and I made sure to let my bosses know that I was uneasy about the situation. I even threw what you might call a spirited discussion about the matter because I knew that safety should be our top priority. Interestingly enough, some other department managers who were present that night also supported my concerns. They watched as I meticulously and cautiously carried out my duties. As I was placing the last 12 boxes on the bottom shelf, An ominous sound filled the air, a cracking and tearing that sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, I found myself buried under an avalanche of arm and hammer cat litter. The shelf had collapsed under the immense weight. The sound of that incident reverberated throughout the entire store, and yet, despite the severity of the situation, we were explicitly told not to dial 911 or take any urgent measures. Well, that simply wasn't acceptable in my book. I knew I had to act swiftly to ensure my well-being. After getting my facial injuries attended to and my cuts patched up, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I reached out to my uncle's then-girlfriend, who happened to be a lawyer. I recounted the events that had just transpired and explained how upper management was trying to sweep the situation under the rug. Together, we pursued justice. Today, as I reflect on that episode, I can confidently say that I haven't exhausted all the financial compensation I received as a result of our legal battle. My experience at Walmart was a stark reminder that safety should never be compromised, and that no one should ever shy away from standing up for what is right, no matter how big the corporation may be.